So just got off the phone with two of our client success coaches, and we're talking about biggest mistakes I see with webinars. Webinars, presentations, speaking engagements that kill conversions. And I want to share those three things with you right here. Hey guys, what's going on? Yuri Elkaim here, CEO and founder of Healthpreneur. We help health professionals get clients and scale their businesses online. And a big piece of how we do that is by helping them build and deploy a perfect client pipeline, which is our proprietary model for attracting and acquiring new clients. And a good piece of that is having a really, really good webinar. And I know there's a lot of talk out there online about webinars are dead, blah, blah, blah. Listen, webinars are not dead because they're still alive and well. People are busier than ever, Yuri. People are not going to watch a long video. Really? Did they watch 3 hours of Netflix last night? You better believe they did in some cases. And the reality is that if it's a must, people will watch. For people who are not interested or not that committed to making a change, they're not going to watch a 45 to 60 minute webinar, which is exactly why it is where it is in the perfect client pipeline. Because if you want more committed clients, you can get people to commit with their time or their money, right? It's really simple. So if you want more committed clients, how can you get that process started in the acquisition of those clients? And a really great way of doing so is having them watch a really great, informative, eye-opening, belief-shattering webinar. That's it, right? Instead of downloading a one-page cheat sheet where there's no time commitment, and most people don't even download or access the very thing they said they wanted access to. So I was talking with two of our client success coaches who are awesome and they help our clients win faster and bigger and all that kind of stuff. And I showed them some stats from all of not all the webinars, but a lot of the webinars that I've released over the years. And I went into Wistia and I showed them, look at the stats here. Look at the decay curve. Look at this one, the decay curve. This one's an hour and 35 minutes. Look at the decay curve. This one's 25 minutes. Notice the same pattern. It's the same thing every single time. Everyone starts. Very few people finish. So do we have to freak out about that? Do we have to redo the webinar so that everyone starts, everyone finishes? You will never find that in the history of humankind. And the reality is that people are busy. They're not interested after a few minutes. They take off, which is exactly why a webinar is so powerful. You don't want to waste time on the phone with someone who has zero context of how you can help them. You don't want to waste time on the phone with someone who's just looking for more information, which could have been given to them in a webinar. If they're not willing to sit and watch a webinar, they should never have the right to speak with you on the phone. If you value your time, you will put the time into creating a webinar because it's the single most important piece of content for your business. And this is something I would stake, my whatever on. The thing, if you are a health professional and you're speaking with prospects, whether it's in the clinic or online or in the DMs or an email, I promise you there are the same conversation happening over and over and over again. If you're repeating yourself, people say, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? How do you do that? All of that should be explained in the webinar. Right? So if I'm in a conversation, because the last thing you ever want to have on the phone, this is the worst conversation that's never going to go well for you, is let's say someone were to ask me, okay, Yuri, nice to meet you. What do you do exactly? Now, if I get into explaining that on the phone, there's no way that sale is going to be made. Never. Even if I'm in the DM conversation on social and someone's like, hey, what do you do? You think I'm supposed to answer that in typing format over there's no way. So here's what we do. Hey, Yuri, great connecting. What exactly do you do? Great question. Do you mind if I share a quick training on how we've helped our clients generate more than $100 million in their virtual businesses, virtual health practices? Person's like, sure, that sounds awesome. Here's the link. Watch the webinar. I recorded the webinar once and now it works for me every day, 24/7. That's leverage. And that's just smart. Why would you repeat yourself a million times? It doesn't make sense. Now, let's go back to the webinar mistakes because there's a difference between having a webinar and having one that converts. And I've been doing webinars, I don't even know, a long time. And I remember many years ago in my health business, we had a new webinar that we were creating for our greens powder. And I recorded the webinar. And when I finished recording it, I looked at the time and I was like, oh my God, 2 hours and 45 minutes? Are you for real? Like, dude, I got to redo this whole thing again. And then I was like, oh man, like I got to jump on a plane in 2 days. I was going to Hawaii. I'm like, I don't have time for this. Let's just get it going. It'll be okay. We'll see what happens. So I recorded it. And we had a promotion that week that we used the webinar for. And so I remember this like very, very clearly. I was a couple days later, I'm on a plane to Hawaii and I, get off the 10, 12-hour flight, whatever it was. And I look at our stats and we'd made $55,000 in the one day from that webinar. And I'm like, holy shit, that's a pretty good plane ride, right? And then it obviously just, built from there as we used it more and more over the coming weeks and months. So that wasn't the first webinar I had done, but it was just a great reminder of like 2 hours and 45 minutes and it still produced amazing results. Would it have produced better results at an hour? Maybe, I don't know. But the thing I want to share with you here is that it's not the length of time. Like the length of time is important. Like you're not going to have like a 10-hour webinar necessarily. But still, like if people are interested and they're committed to making a change, they will watch. It's the people who are not committed, who don't want to make a change, who won't watch. And like, I'll get people leaving comments on our Facebook ads, be like, Yuri, you lost my interest after the first 2 minutes. I'm like, do you think I give a shit? You think I'm going to re-record my webinar for you, the one individual who I'm never going to work with? Or I don't even care if I get that comment more than once. Because that's the purpose of the webinar. I want to push those people away like they have the plague. See you later. Do not come into my world. So that's the purpose of the webinar. It's a filtering tool, number one. Number two is that think of your webinar like a documentary. So a documentary's purpose is not to give away the how. If you've ever watched the documentary The Game Changers, which is the one that comes to mind when I think about this, The Game Changers was all about the power of eating more plant-based foods or a plant-based diet to improve health and performance. Not once in that documentary, which was about more than an hour or so, not once did they say, here's how to make a salad, here's a recipe for a smoothie, here's exactly how to make green juices. Not once, not a single how-to was presented in that documentary. The entire documentary was about here's why this is important, okay? And here's what we need to talk about in relation to that. So the purpose of the webinar is the why and the what, okay? Or here's what it's about, here's why it's important. That's it. The documentary does the same thing. It's not giving you the cookbook or how to do all this stuff. It's getting you to shift your beliefs around the topic. So what happened when I finished watching The Game Changers is I was like, you know what, maybe I should go vegetarian again. Because I was vegetarian, raw vegan actually many, many years ago. And I felt amazing, but it wasn't sustainable for me. So I posted this on Facebook and I knew I was opening up a can of worms with this. I'm like, just watch Game Changers. I think I'm going to go vegetarian again. And I'm like, publish. And let's wait. Let's see the wrath that comes from that. And everyone jumped into that. Like, oh, it's so biased. Keto's the best, vegetarianism's gonna everyone has their perspectives, right? This is the beautiful thing. This is the human condition, okay? So there's like hundreds of comments, like obviously, it's biased. Vegetarianism has a higher rate of heart disease, and there's just like conflicts going back and forth in the comment thread. And what I recognized was that when people said stuff like, well, obviously you want to go vegetarian, that was the agenda they were pushing on you because the producers of the documentary are vegetarian athletes. And I said, exactly. That is the purpose of why they would put the money behind the movie, because they want to push an agenda. That's what you want to do with your webinar. Is you're not here to present the objective data. You're here to say, this is bullshit. This is the truth as I see it. Remember, in the world, there is no objective truth. There's no objective, you can find scientific studies, hundreds of them, to show the benefits of keto. You can do the complete opposite as well to show the benefits of vegetarianism. There's hundreds of studies showing the benefits of saturated fat, and there's hundreds of studies showing the detriments of saturated fat. Your goal is not to be the peer-reviewed meta-analysis of all the data. Your goal is to pick a side based on what you believe to be true and what you have seen to work in your world and push that agenda, assuming that's the thing you represent. So in our webinar is basically like all this stuff most people are doing to build a business online, the organic posting, ironically, YouTube videos like this, podcasting, spending all day on social media, doing stupid dancing videos is a complete waste of time. And I basically back that whole thing up. And so what that's doing is I'm building desire for those people who are like, you know what, like I think this guy's onto something because I've been doing this stuff for a while and it's not working. Okay. The reason I do, like just as a side note, the reason I do these videos is because I love sharing content, but none of this stuff is generating business for us. At least not at this, I mean, it's some business, but it's not like my business depends on this YouTube channel. I'm building this bad boy for 10 years down the road. Right? I don't need this now. I enjoy doing this. I don't need this to generate revenue, which is why I don't care, right? If I needed these videos to rank and produce, results in terms of clients, I would be majorly screwed. Okay? And so what I'm sharing here is that because we have a great foundation, our perfect client pipeline, which generates 90% of our business, I have the freedom to do things like this that build my business 5 to 10 years in the future. Okay? Just as a side note. So what I'm saying is like when you're posting on Instagram and you're relying on that stuff to build your business, good luck. It's one thing if you've got a major following, but if you don't, you're not going to get any traction. Maybe on TikTok, you'll get some traction initially, but that's going to change obviously as they introduce advertising over time. Anyways, so the purpose of the webinar is to have a very opinionated approach. So that's a little bit of background. Let me share the 3 mistakes now, okay? So the 3 mistakes that I see some of our clients make, but also other people that I've seen webinars on, are the following 3 things. Okay. Number 1 is you don't have a compelling big idea. The big idea is the one thing you want your viewers to believe to be true in watching your webinar. So this, like, you can replace webinar with presentation or speaking engagement. Here's the funny thing is when I speak on stage, I present my webinar. Okay, and it works just as well in person as it does virtually. Like every single time over the past 5 years I've spoken on stage, it's exactly the same thing. And it's pretty much my webinar. I have the slide deck already. If I'm using it, here it is. And what happens is I get people coming up to me after I speak on stage and they're like, Yuri, thank you so much. This is exactly what I've been feeling. You were inside my head. You've been speaking to exactly what I've been going through. I'm like, I know. I've been in this for a long time. I understand what you're going through, okay? That's what a good webinar is going to do, or a good presentation. It's going to hit people emotionally. It's going to connect with them logically, and you're going to be inside their head, and they're thinking to themselves, man, this person understands what I'm going through, and if they understand that, they probably have a solution to that as well. So anyways, your big idea is important. The big idea is that one idea, the through line that you want people to buy into throughout the webinar. So as an example in the Game Changers, their big idea is adopting more of a plant-based diet is beneficial for your health and performance. Now, that's not like earth-shattering, like breaking news, but that's the thing they want us to believe. So now the rest of the webinar, very much like a lawyer in court, is going to now present cases, exhibit A, exhibit B, et cetera, to support that big idea. So the big idea, number 1, has to be clear, right? You have to be clear about like, what is the intention of this thing? What do I want people to believe or buy into? And the cool thing about the big idea is it can have zero relevance to what is objectively true, right? I could create a webinar about how TikTok is the greatest thing of all time. And I could find data to support that. And if I'm good in my presentation, I can convince enough people of that. Okay. So you have to share what you believe to be true. You have to share your philosophy, your agenda. That's what this is. You're pushing your agenda, the thing you want people to buy into, because if they do and they work with you, that's going to be the methodology that you walk them through. So the big idea is number 1. Number 2, so the mistake here is there is no big idea, right? It's just like a bunch of stuff. There's no like singular theme that ties it all together. And then if there is, it's not that appealing. So that's mistake number 1. Number 2 is that your content goes way too deep into the how. A number of years ago when I was doing a workshop on this, I had a client attend, and she's like, well, I've got a webinar, but it's not converting well. So I said, hey, awesome. Do you have it on your computer? Can we have a look at it? So we had us, sit down and look through her slide deck, and I'm just kind of like sifting through. I can see things fairly quickly. So I'm like sifting through the slides, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see what the issue is. So I'm like, do you see what the issue is? And she's like, I'm not sure. I'm like, the issue is you're giving them exactly what to do here in the webinar. And then her thought was, well, Yuri, like, am I not helping them then? Like, why would they want to watch this if they're not getting the recipe or the how-to? And I said, that's not the purpose of the webinar, right? Everything we just talked about over the last 10 or so minutes is the purpose of the webinar. The purpose of the webinar is not to give people the how-to. That's where they pay you the money to get the solution. The purpose of the webinar is to build their desire, break their beliefs, introduce a new thought pattern around a topic. So they're like, holy cow, this person has a solution that I've never done before or tried before. This makes sense. Let's explore the next step. That's the purpose of the webinar. It's not to give away. All right, so here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to take 2 tablespoons of fish oil first thing in the morning, and then 1 capsule of probiotics. And then here's exactly the recipe you're gonna have for dinner. Like, why would you give all of that stuff away for free in the webinar? Because here's what's gonna happen. Even if you did that, no one's gonna take action on it. And the reason they're not gonna take action on it is because they didn't pay for it. And guys, I'm going to continue to repeat this. What people do not pay for, they do not value, right? Do you think my kids value our house? No, they can throw cars at the wall. Why? Well, because they didn't pay for it. Simple, right? Do you think they care if they scratch my car? No. Why? Because they didn't pay for it. I promise you though, when they buy their car, they're going to protect that thing like it's the last car on the planet. This is what happens. People value what they pay for. So you are doing someone a disservice by giving them the solutions that they can try to implement on their own for free. Now, with all that said, if you watch all my videos here on YouTube, you'll get a lot of very tactical things to deploy in your business. And the reason I'm happy to give you everything away for free here is because I know most of you guys are not going to do anything with it. So not that I don't want you to do anything with it, but I understand that if you see the value in this, if you're the right fit, eventually you'll be like, man, I want to work with Yuri because this guy's legit. Okay. That's my intention here. But in the form of a webinar, I can't give you everything you need to succeed in business. It's impossible. And you can't do that for your clients either with their health. So don't try to. So giving away too much of the how-to is a big mistake in the content. You are being helpful by helping people see their problem in a different way. That's the key. It's not about, well, I didn't get any takeaways. I'm like, well, that's your problem. Value is an extraction game. That's up to the viewer. That's not up to you. I promise if you do a decent job on your webinar, the right people will get a couple nuggets out of that. And that just might be like they change the way they think about something. And that's what you want to do. The third mistake is terrible delivery. So I'm just gonna let my dog out. Don't you just love how unedited these videos are? I have a client who spends a ridiculous amount of money on video edits. I'm like, dude, I'm just letting my dog out. I'm not even gonna cut this out of the video because that's not what's important. And if you think it is, you're focusing on the wrong things. So that's the way it goes. Okay, so delivery. If your delivery sucks, no one is going to take the next step with you. And the next step in the form of our perfect client pipeline. So after the webinar, people are going to apply to speak with you. And by that point, they're like, man, like, I agree with everything you say. This makes a lot of sense to me. So when they jump on the phone with you, now it's just a simple conversation about the next steps, right? You're not having to explain yourself and all that kind of stuff. So if your delivery is robotic and lackluster and low energy, you're just like, there's no way that's going to work. Can you imagine? Like, I think I bring a decent amount of enthusiasm and passion to these videos. It's because I'm very passionate about this stuff. It drives me nuts when people do stupid stuff. And I just have a lot of fuel, if you will, behind my points of view. And you should as well. So if I'm listening to someone's webinar and I'm like, holy cow, what just happened over the past 20 minutes? They're done, right? It's like listening to a speaker from stage, and it's like listening to a robot speaking about data. Like, just you have to bring the enthusiasm. You got to bring the passion. If you're not enthusiastic about this thing, you think they're going to be? No way. When I speak on stage, I'm not like, Tony Robbinsing the whole place up, but man, like I bring the heat, right? I bring the passion, I bring the fire, and I get people like, I'll point them out. I'll just get them involved. And it's a lot more interesting than standing behind a podium and just being like, so in today's talk, I would like to talk with you about how to fall asleep in your chair. The delivery is important, okay? And I think even if your content's mediocre, it's how you say what you are going to say that makes the biggest difference. So I'm not saying put out a mediocre webinar in terms of its content, but out of the two, I really do think delivery is the most important, because even in the context of sales, you don't even have to know what to say, but if you know how to say it, you win. Conviction is everything. And recording a webinar is recording a 1-hour sales pitch, more or less. A documentary is a 1-hour sales pitch for a specific agenda, right? Michael Moore, all of his movies, they are sales pitches for his perspective on a topic. It's really simple. So it's the same thing. You have to bring conviction in a sales conversation. You have to bring conviction in a presentation, a webinar, a speaking engagement. And if you don't, it is not going to work well. Make sense? So those are the 3 biggest mistakes: poor delivery, giving away too much how-to, and not having a big idea that is either clarified and succinct and or not very compelling. Okay? So anyways, I hope that makes sense. My little guy's screaming his face off. That's just the way it goes here in the Elkaim family. Hope you have an amazing day. Hope you find this useful. If you have, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I got tons of other stuff that is infinitely useful for your health business. So anyways, let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.